Welcome to LICA's latest gardening video. In this video, we are going to spend some time learning about the importance of pollinators in our gardens and how to encourage them to get some beautiful produce. And my name is Rachel. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at LICA. And just before we get into it, I do want to acknowledge that LICA and our community garden is located on and benefits from the traditional lands of the Dene-Sulene and the Nahia and is in the heart of the Métis homeland. So LICA respects and honors our responsibility to truth and reconciliation as members of Treaty 6 and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 2. So before we talk about who's doing the pollinating, let's talk a little bit about what pollination is, the basics of pollination. Pollination, simply put, is how plants reproduce. So you have your male plant and your female plant. The male plant is producing pollen grains in its anthers. The female plant is producing ova in its stigma. And their offspring is created through the production of seeds when that pollen and the ova meet. Pollination can occur with the help of environmental factors like wind and water. So that's called abiotic pollination. And that term abiotic is just referring to the fact that the things that are doing the pollination are not alive. They're not living. Wind, water. Biotic pollination is the opposite of that. Things that are living are doing that pollination. So biotic pollination is aided by animals and insects. Some plants, even those with like very small flowers, they can self-pollinate, but that's not the norm. So when you think of pollination, you're probably thinking of the bee. This is a western honeybee here, super important in crop production, and also making our gardens nice and beautiful and well pollinated. But bees are not the only pollinators in our ecosystem. So for example, we have red squirrels here, hummingbirds, butterflies and moths, and even bats. All of these small animals are doing a lot of that heavy lifting of pollination for us. And just to give you an example of a moth, there is one moth called the Yucca Moth that pollinates a specific plant, the yucca plant, and they live in this kind of symbiotic relationship where that's the only animal that can pollinate that plant. If one goes down, so does the other. So just to show you the variety of pollinators that are in our ecosystem and kind of the special role that they play for certain plants. So why are pollinators important to us? Well, if we look at the big worldwide picture, pollinators are responsible for about 1/3 of all the food that we eat. So that's them pollinating our tomato plants and our fruits and vegetables to make them grow, and it's also them pollinating the forage that our livestock will grow, so those grasses and things like that. About 87% of all the flowering plants in the world are pollinated by animals, so that kind of shows you how reliant plants are on these small animals to do that pollination for them, to make them reproduce. And in Canada, the economic value of honeybee pollination is approximately $5 billion in additional crop value. So if we did not have those pollinators available to be pollinating our wheat crops and our canola, our agriculture industry would be out approximately $5 billion. So it's not just environmental sustainability and loving the animals that are helping us grow our food. There is a real economic impact of pollinators disappearing. And I think this is the biggest reason why pollinators are important to us, because without them, we wouldn't be able to grow beautiful, fresh fruits and vegetables in our gardens for us to enjoy. So by increasing that number of pollinators in our gardens, we're contributing to a healthy, sustainable ecosystem, and we're playing a really important role in the food chain. So now that we've talked about all of the great benefits that pollinators have for us in our gardens, let's talk about the ways that we can help them and support them doing that work for us. Growing your garden helps in itself. So by growing our own produce, we are increasing our own health. So we veggies fresh from our backyard. We're getting way more nutrients than we would if we had bought shipped produce, just because those nutrients degrade over time. It takes a little bit of time for that food to come to you. We're also reducing our carbon footprint by not relying on transporting our produce from other countries. So that tomato is not getting on a plane, getting on a truck, and making its way to us. It's been grown right in our backyard and doesn't need any carbon to transport it. Another bonus is that homegrown veggies really do taste better than store-bought. They're just sweeter, more flavorful, more juicy, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're like fresh off the vine. For you, it may not be feasible to eat backyard vegetables all year long. We live in northern Alberta. We just can't grow food all year, but we can enjoy them while we have them. And there is tons of ways to preserve our produce for those cold winter months. Canning, making jams and jellies, and making sure that those root vegetables are stored properly. So what are some other ways we can help our local pollinators? Well, we could grow lots of native species of wildflowers and perennials. You can consider converting all or part of your lawn into a pollinator garden. By encouraging those native species of wildflowers and perennials, you're going to give the local pollinators some really good juice. They're going to be so attracted to your garden and to your lawn. And then they're going to do a lot of that heavy lifting of pollination for you. You could also reduce or eliminate the pesticides and herbicides that you use. At the very least, don't apply these during blooming times when your plants are flowering, just to give the pollinators a chance to get in there and pollinate without any chemical interference in the way. You could also build a bug hotel. We're going to show you how to make those today on a later slide. And you could also install a bat house or a bird house. And one really great incentive for that is that bats can eat approximately 1,000 mosquitoes an hour. So having some bats around your property is actually going to be really beneficial for you in the summer because they're going to eat all those nasty mosquitoes. And these are just some examples of those beneficial things you can do for pollinators. So I have here on the left, this is what a bat house looks like. So kind of a small wooden structure, pretty unobtrusive. They don't take up a lot of space on your property. And then this is a bug hotel. And you can see all these little holes. This is where bees and other species are going to crawl in and lay their eggs. So let's say you've made it through this presentation and you're thinking to yourself, I'm a master gardener. I know how to encourage pollinators on my property to give me a beautiful garden. How can I help them in a bigger way? How can I support pollinators in my community? Well, for one, you could do that through your government. You could ask your municipality or your town or your city if they have a no cosmetic pesticide policy. And if they don't, you could consider writing them to support a change. You could also do that through science, citizen science. Citizen science is really important to get information from these small places that don't have a lot of research going on. So you can take part in surveys like the ones that Pollination Canada puts out to help researchers understand more about the pollinators in your area. You can also buy local produce and local bee products. So if you go to your farmer's market, you could buy honey, beeswax candles, buy local vegetables and fruits, and that will support our pollinators as well. And lastly, you can reduce your carbon footprint by making eco-friendly choices in your purchases and in your actions. You're showing the world that you want a better future and you want to support sustainability. And lastly, we talked about perennials and wildflowers, those native species that we want to grow to encourage pollinators. What should we grow? How should we grow it? Well, we have some sheets linked in the description to refer to plants that thrive in the LICA region, native plants that thrive here. So go down and find those in the description. Many of those species, they can be found at our new rain garden at the Shaw House in Moose Lake. So if you want to see them growing in real life in action, you can head out there. And just as important as the species you pick is how you plant them. So try to grow at least 3 species whose peak blooming occurs between May and August, so those summer months. You want to grow differently shaped flowers and differently colored flowers to attract different pollinators. So different pollinators have different kinds of vision, eyesight. They'll see colors differently, they'll see shapes differently, and they'll be attracted to different things. So you want to grow a variety of wildflowers and perennials. You want to clump your species together. So you want to plant a bunch of flowers kind of in one small space to make it a big bullseye for those pollinators to find. And you also want to make sure that your garden has shrubs, trees, and grasses in the surrounding area to increase the diversity of nesting sites for those pollinators. So giving them a variety of resources to do nesting, to find somewhere to sleep for the night, essentially. And increase overwintering as well, so that they survive the winter and come back to pollinate again. So earlier in the video, I showed you one of those commercial bug hotels that are available. Looked like a little wooden house with all those tubes inside. And those are great. They're beautiful. They last a long time. Feel free to buy one. But you could also make a bug hotel out of recycled objects, things that you're definitely going to find around your house. So to make these, what you're going to need is a milk carton, preferably a 1 liter or a 2 liter carton, or you could do a juice bottle as well. And you're just going to cut a window out of one of the sides to give an entrance point for the bugs. And you can kind of see it on this plastic one, but you can definitely see it on the milk carton here. You're first going to attach some twine just at the top, you can see there, to hang it up at the end. And then what you're going to do is fill it up with natural items to encourage all sorts of beneficial insects to live in here and overwinter in here. So you can go foraging in the forest to go find some of these things, pine cones, twigs, moss, grass, things of that nature. You could also go to the dollar store, buy some bamboo stakes because they're hollow and they create these nice little rooms, straws, things like that. You just want to make sure that anything that you're putting inside hasn't been treated with any sort of pesticides or chemicals. And how are we going to actually use this? So once you have it all full of your materials, you have your window cut out and open, how are we going to use it? Well, most species of bees and most insects in Alberta, not all, but most, are solitary species. So how they use these bug hotels is they'll crawl into one of these straws or tubes, they'll lay their eggs, and they'll cap the end and sleep in there over winter until the spring. And then their larvae will hatch, they'll come out of the bug hotel. Other species that may inhabit your bug hotel aside from bees could be beetles, lacewings, butterflies, ladybugs, spiders, all sorts of beneficial insects. And just to ensure that they are going to survive over the winter, you don't want to bring your bug hotel inside. And I mean, don't bring it inside because you don't want to get bugs inside, but also you don't want it to get too warm. Keep it outside in an unheated shed or a garage to protect it from the elements. Maybe put it under an eaves or something like that. But you want it to stay cool because the larvae and the eggs, they time their hatching based on the weather outside. So they're adapted to this really cold temperature. And if you bring it inside too early, their bodily processes are going to start up before they're ready to hatch. So, to review, we talked about some of the species that are pollinating in our area. So those bees and bats and other insects that are doing that great pollination for us. We talked about why it's important to encourage pollinators, not just for your own garden, but for your community as well. How to do that, and also I gave you a bit of a craft to do with your recycled objects in your home to support the pollinators that are living on your property. So I want to say thank you. Please tune in for more gardening videos from LICA. They're on the way, and have a great rest of your day.